The return to nowhere. Dust clung to the wheels of the army wagon as it rolled into Fort Hollow Bend, a speck of stone and timber on the edge of nowhere. The flag atop the gate hung limp, bleached and frayed, a forgotten symbol in a forgotten place. Captain Elias Ward sat rigid in the wagon bed, his cane clenched between gloved fingers. The sun baked the scar on his thigh through the threadbare wool of his trousers. It throbbed with every jolt of the wheels, but he made no sound. He had endured worse. Much worse. The war had ended over a year ago, but the ghost hadn't left him. He still smelled cannon smoke in his dreams, still saw Sergeant Halloran's eyes go glassy after the last charge at Cold Harbor. That battle had ended his career as a fighting man. Now this half-abandoned post tucked into the hills, was where the army had sent him a fade. As the wagon creaked to a halt near the barracks, a voice called out, strong and familiar. "You look like you lost a fight with the sun, Captain Ward." Elias turned his head slowly. A woman stood by the well, sleeves rolled to her elbows, auburn hair tucked under a worn straw hat. Maggie Crane. She hadn't changed much. Maybe leaner, maybe more lines around her eyes, but her voice still held the same calm grit he remembered. She had been the sutler's daughter during the war, always moving among the wounded with cloth and calm hands. Elias tipped his hat. "And you look like the sun lost that fight." She gave a short laugh, dry as the wind. "Didn't expect to see you back here. Didn't expect to be—" He slid off the wagon with a grunt. His right leg nearly gave, and he leaned heavy on the cane. Maggie moved, fast and certain, catching his elbow. "I've got it," he muttered, but her grip stayed firm. "You've also got pride," she said, "and that's heavier than your trunk. Let me help." Together, they walked toward the officers' quarters, a squat building with one working shutter and a roof patched with scrap tin. The place reeked of rot and mice. "Place hasn't changed," Elias said. Maggie snorted. "Neither have you. Still lead with your jaw and carry your pain like a secret." He looked at her, really looked. Dirt smudged her skirt, calluses lined her fingers. But her eyes were steady, amber in the slanting light. "Thought you would have left," he said quietly. "After the war, after your father passed." "I did leave," she said, "for 3 days. Didn't like the world beyond the ridge. Too loud, too forgetful." Elias said nothing. He understood. Some things shouldn't be forgotten. That night, after the post lights dimmed and the few remaining soldiers settled into their bunks, Elias sat alone on the barrack steps. The prairie stretched out before him, vast and humming with crickets. The sky above was black velvet pierced with stars. Behind his eyes, the war still raged. He remembered the smoke, the screams, the moment his leg gave way under a shell burst. He remembered crawling through mud for miles, refusing to die on enemy ground. The cane beside him now was less a tool and more a reminder. Survival wasn't always a blessing. Footsteps approached, soft ones. Maggie sat beside him, holding a mug. "Coffee," she said. Hot, bitter, and honest. Like me. He accepted it. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the distance between them felt thinner. "Do you miss it?" she asked, staring into the dark. "War." "No. Before it." Elias exhaled slowly. "Before feels like another life." They sat in silence, letting the night fill the empty spaces between words. Crickets chirped. A coyote howled far off. "You ever think maybe we're the only ones left because we were too stubborn to go?" Maggie asked. Elias looked at her. "Or too broken to know when to leave." She didn't argue, just sipped her coffee and stared into the endless dark. Elias shifted, pain pulsing up his side. "I don't know what I'm doing here." "You came back to a place where you weren't a ghost," she said softly. "Sometimes that's enough." For the first time in weeks, Elias felt something loosen inside. Not healed, never healed, but maybe less alone. The wind picked up, carrying dust and memory. And beside him, the woman who stayed didn't flinch. The fence between them. The sun had just begun to rise when Elias heard the shouting. He stepped out of the officers' quarters, cane in hand, and squinted toward the ruckus. 2 privates argued with a woman at the gate, voices echoing across the yard. It wasn't until he got closer that he recognized her. Maggie Crane. Again, she stood with her hands on her hips, chin tilted up, mouth tight with irritation. The soldiers looked uneasy, like they'd prefer facing Comanche arrows over a glare. "She's trespassing," one muttered as Elias approached. "I'm drawing water," Maggie snapped. "From a well I dug when this fort still had a full garrison and my father fed half of it." Elias held up a hand. "Everyone back to your posts." The soldiers obeyed, muttering under their breath. Maggie didn't move. "You're hauling water from the army's well?" Elias asked. "It's the only working one within 2 miles," she said. "Mine's dry. Drought took it." He studied her, dust on her boots, sweat streaking her brow, hands rough from rope and toil. She wasn't doing this for spite. She needed it. Still, rules were rules. "You should have asked," he said. "I did," she replied coolly. "Twice. The last commander ignored me. I figured I'd stop wasting breath." Elias exhaled. "You could have sent word to me." She stepped closer. "Would you have listened?" Their eyes locked. The answer hung between them like a drawn gun. "Let's walk," Elias said finally. They moved beyond the gate, down the narrow path toward her homestead. Dry brush crackled beneath their boots. The land stretched wide and flat, dotted with brittle grass and rock. The morning heat already shimmered off the earth. Elias limped beside her, slower than he liked, his cane sinking into the soft dirt. She didn't offer help this time. Maybe she'd learned he wouldn't take it. Her small cabin came into view, with slats weathered to gray, a crooked fence half swallowed by thistle. 2 goats bleated from behind the shed, and a rusted wind vane turned lazily overhead. "You keep this place alone?" he asked. "Been doing it for 2 years. No neighbors?" She shrugged. "One family left 5 months ago. The rest packed up when the Indian raids started again. Guess I didn't scare easy." He nodded. He believed it. Maggie filled a bucket from a barrel and offered him a ladle. He drank, the water cool and clean. "You're wasting away," she said bluntly. "You barely touched supper last night." He glanced at her. "Didn't know you were watching." "I don't have much else to do." They stood in silence for a moment, cicadas buzzing like static around them. "I'm supposed to enforce boundaries," Elias said at last. "Orders, property lines, resource management. That well is technically military." "And technically," she replied, "I kept this place alive when the army left it for dead. That well still exists because I kept patching it between raids and dry spells. I didn't come here to argue." "No," she said, softer now. "You came because they didn't know where else to put you." The words landed heavier than gunfire. Elias looked away, jaw tightening. "I didn't mean that cruelly," she added. "But you and I, we weren't made for cities, were we?" Elias leaned against the fence post. "Cities don't know what to do with the broken." She looked at his leg, then into his eyes. "Neither do you." The wind stirred her hair as silence stretched between them. "I don't know who I am without the uniform," he admitted. "The war gave me orders, gave me something to be." "You're still you," Maggie said, just a little quieter now. A hawk cried overhead. In the distance, dust rose where the trail curled through the ridge. "Come by tonight," she said suddenly. "There's stew, and I make bread better than army rations." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right." As he turned to leave, she called after him, "And you don't need to bring that damn cane if you don't want." He gave a faint smile over his shoulder. "It's not for walking. It's to keep the world at arm's length." She smirked. "You keep that up, and even the prairie will walk away from you." Elias kept walking, the sun rising behind him and the woman who refused to vanish into history still standing at her gate. Fire at the edge of the world. The wind howled low across the ridgeline, carrying the smell of smoke. Elias crouched beside a blackened wagon, his hand hovering above the scorched wood. The wheels were broken, the canvas torn to ribbons. A set of tracks, small, barefoot, disappeared into the sagebrush beyond. "They didn't take the horses," Maggie said behind him. "That's not Comanche." "No," Elias muttered. "Bandits, maybe. Or deserters." Maggie scanned the empty horizon. "They always strike just close enough to remind us we're alone." Elias stood slowly, leaning on his cane. "We need to report this. Let the settlers in the valley know they're exposed." "I'll ride with you," she said. He looked at her sharply. "No, it could be dangerous." She crossed her arms. "So, is breathing out here?" and I know this land better than you." He didn't argue. He just nodded once, the way a soldier concedes to a stronger force. They rode out side by side, the horses kicking up dust as the sun dipped toward the west. Maggie guided them along back trails, avoiding open stretches. She didn't speak unless necessary, but Elias found comfort in her silence. It was the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. They made camp in a shallow ravine that night, lighting a small fire tucked behind rocks. The stars blinked out overhead like distant watchfires, cold and constant. Maggie passed him a tin plate of beans and jerky. "Not as good as my stew, but it won't kill you." He gave a weak smile. "Low bar, but I'll take it." They ate in silence. After a while, Elias leaned back on his bedroll, staring at the sky. "You ever think of leaving? For real, I mean." She poked at the fire with a stick. "All the time." He turned his head toward her. "Then why haven't you?" She didn't answer right away. "Because this land remembers me. Out there, I'm just another widow's daughter with calloused hands and no money. But here," she gestured at the emptiness, "here I matter. This place holds my scars." Elias nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." She looked at him, her voice softer. "You still dream about it?" He closed his eyes briefly. "Every night. Some days it's the blood. Other days it's the quiet after." Maggie moved closer to the fire, her knees drawn up. "My fiancé died at Gettysburg. We'd only written 10 letters before he enlisted. I waited a year before I let myself believe he wasn't coming home." Elias looked at her in the firelight. "You ever regret not leaving with the others?" "No," she said. "Not once. Regret is for people who had choices." A branch cracked in the dark. Both of them froze. Elias reached for his pistol. Maggie already had her rifle in hand. A moment later, a shadow lunged from the brush, a low blur of fur and snarling teeth. A cougar. Elias fired first, missing. The beast swiped, knocking him off balance. His legs screamed in agony. He hit the dirt hard, his pistol spinning from his hand. Maggie shouted his name and fired once. The cougar staggered, but kept coming. She fired again, this time straight into its chest. It collapsed beside Elias, twitching once before going still. The only sound left was Elias's ragged breathing. She rushed to him, dropping to her knees. "You're bleeding." "It's the leg," he groaned. "I think it tore the wound open." "Hold still." She tore a strip from her underskirt, pressing it to the gash. Her hands moved fast, sure without panic. Elias clenched his teeth. "You saved me." She didn't look up. "Well, don't die. You owe me a second helping of stew." Despite the pain, he laughed once, short and sharp. She sat back, breathless. "You always jump in head first, don't you?" "It's the only direction I know." Their eyes met, lit by the fire, softened by something unspoken. His hand found hers, rough, calloused, warm. "I was lost when I came here," he said quietly. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Then stay lost with me." For a moment, the world was still. He leaned in, kissed her softly, just once. But when she leaned closer, he pulled back. "I'm not whole," he said. "Neither am I," she replied. But she stayed by his side, holding his hand until the stars began to fade. The woman who stayed. The days passed in a haze of stitches, silence, and shifting light. Elias lay in Maggie's cabin, the stitched wound in his leg healing slowly beneath layers of poultice and pain. The cougar's gash had reopened the old war wound, but this time it wasn't field medics who patched him up. It was her, steady, quiet, never flinching. She didn't hover. She didn't fuss. She came in when needed, cleaned the wound, fed him, and said little unless he asked. On the 5th day, as golden light poured through the crooked shutters, he finally spoke. "You could have let me die out there." Maggie didn't look up from the basin she was scrubbing. "But then I'd have to go back to eating stew alone." His lips twitched. "Is that why you stayed?" "For the company." She wiped her hands on a towel and finally met his gaze. "I stayed because you looked at this place the way I do. Like it's not just where we end up, but where we're allowed to begin again." Elias tried to sit up, grimacing at the sharp pull in his thigh. She moved forward, instinctively bracing his back. Their faces were close now, too close to hide behind words. "I don't want to leave," he said, the truth finally bleeding through his voice. Maggie hesitated. Then don't. They offer me a post in St. Louis, he added. Desk job. Safe. Paved streets, clean sheets. She pulled back just slightly. You thinking of taking it? I was. He paused. But now I'm not so sure. The silence thickened between them, but it wasn't empty. I've built everything I have with cracked hands and quiet mornings, she said. If you stay, I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just don't want to lose the first man who didn't look at me like I was something waiting to be rescued. Elias looked around her little cabin. The shelves of canned beans. The boots by the door. The rifle propped against the window. Her world was stitched together from survival, not sentiment. And somehow, that made him want to be part of it more than any promotion or polish post. He nodded slowly. I'm not much use in a parade uniform anymore. She smiled faintly. Good. I don't like brass. Too shiny. You belong in dust and grit like the rest of us. A knock at the door broke the moment. Private Tanners stood on the step, hat in hand. Sir, settlers came in from the valley. Ran into raiders 5 miles out. Lost 2 wagons and their lead man. Elias was already reaching for his jacket. How many people? 10. Maybe 12. Mostly women and children. I'll ride out. Tanners blinked. Sir, you're not cleared for. I said I'll ride. Maggie's jaw tightened. You're not even healed. He looked at her, voice low. But I'm still their commander. She didn't argue. She just fetched his coat, helped him buckle his holster, and handed him the rifle he'd left hanging by the hearth. If you're going to be stupid, she said, at least be armed. He gave her a ghost of a smile. Always. He rode out that afternoon with 3 soldiers and a grimace in every step of his stirrup. The desert greeted him with heat, dust, and trouble. But this time, he rode for more than duty. He rode for her. He returned 2 days later, bruised, exhausted, and sunburnt, but alive. Maggie saw him long before he reached the fence. She didn't run to him. She waited, like always, steady and unshaken. He dismounted slowly and limped toward her. They made it? She asked. He nodded. All of them. Then he added, quieter, I sent my resignation to St. Louis. She blinked. You did. I'm not going back. There's nothing they're worth serving. She took a step closer. And here. He looked around. The broken fence, the stubborn cabin, the goats chewing indifferently nearby. And her. Here's where I remember who I am. Without another word, she walked to him and kissed him. Not gently, not with caution, but like someone who had waited too damn long for a man to stop running. When they pulled apart, she whispered, You stayed. He rested his forehead against hers. Because you never left. Epilogue. Weeks passed. The sunflowers behind Maggie's cabin bloomed bright and golden. Elias stood near the new fence, hammer in hand, sweat on his brow. Maggie brought him water and leaned beside him. Still think you're broken? She asked. He looked out over the horizon. No, just bent in the right direction. She smiled. And together, on the edge of the world, they built something neither war nor time could tear down.